symbol to represent the Pharaoh, the Nesut-Biti. His name was Zoser. He had a prime minister, Imhotep, which means Prince of Peace. Imhotep. Hotep meaning peace. And what he did was to develop this conceptual framework. Brother Jesse, do you need me on the microphone because you're taking me? I didn't realize.
I'm picking you up, good.
It's good?
Mm-hmm.
They had something known as a mastaba, a big flat building like that, of which we now have concepts of the mausoleum. But it was a long and flat. Long story short, what he did is he built a smaller one on top, like that, and another one, and he did that 6 times. And that is what the step pyramid is. It is a sequence of 6 mastabas placed on top of each other. But what made it so important was that he developed a relationship from the ground going all the way up, that he created a run-to-rise ratio between the A to the B, A to the B, A to the B, on up to 6. He said that if you ran A and rose B, proportionate on each step, no matter if that mastaba above it was smaller, you would create a relationship mathematically when you squared. And when you squared the A plus squared the B, you created what? You created a C squared. 900 to 1,000 years later, there's a man going to be called Pythagoras, who they're going to give credit for creating the run-to-rise ratio of A squared plus B squared equals C squared, which built mathematically. We call it the run-to-rise ratio in mathematics, and we teach it in 5th grade mathematics. But his name was not Pythagoras. His name was Pythagoras, because he studied in Egypt for 22 years at the feet of black people. They don't teach us this. Cognitive dissonance. But the greatness of Imhotep was more. Imhotep also laid the foundations for what we now will be calling the perfect pyramid. Because in developing that run-to-rise ratio, A squared plus B squared equals C squared, what you're also going to develop, which we teach in 6th grade, is a mathematical formula known as what? Y equals mx plus b, which is what? Finding the slope. See, this is why I encourage us when we go into our schools. I'm talking about academic excellence. I'm not just talking about clapping for Imhotep. Imhotep did great things, and I applaud him. But if we cannot instill those mathematical and scientific principles in our children to be able to return back into our communities and build their communities, then that's just dead history. I want this to be a living legacy, but you can't deal with this if you don't understand cosmology, because everything that Imhotep is about to do deals with cosmology. It deals with cosmology. Because what Imhotep comes to realize is that there is another way that you can add other mathematical principles, and what he does is that he says, okay, now we've got run-to-rise ratio, now we've got finding the slope. Now what we're going to do is something interesting, because this is going to take him into another world. And what this does for Imhotep is that he develops a mathematical principle that he knows can only be perfected in time that he will not have, so he lays out the mathematical formulations for other generations to be able to follow behind. So now let me take you back up on that helicopter ride. And I want to take you up above the Giza pyramid, Khufu's pyramid, the largest pyramid. I want to take you above, and I want us all to look down on the pyramid. Can you all envision this? Every side of the pyramid is 755 feet, which, when we kind of convert this into our own thought process, it would be equivalent to about 75.5 story building. Because basically, give or take, a story is about 10 feet. So, lay a 75-story building side, 75 side, 75 side. I've been to the pyramid, been inside, I saw it. Massive. For those who have been there, you know what I'm talking about. Huge complex. TV don't do it justice. It just makes it, even when you get that big LG TV, when it makes it as big as a 52-inch or a 60-inch, you can't get no bigger than that. But when you up on that, it's a whole other world. When you go inside, you enter into a whole world. Looking down, 755 feet. Smart, brilliant thoughts. What they did was they created a situation where it wasn't exact. It wasn't exact. So what actually happened was, the north side is 755.88. The southern side is 755.77 feet. And the east and west side is 755.43 feet. The height of the pyramid is 481.4 feet. 481.4 feet. Now, let's go back into math class. Because it's important, because of cognitive dissonance. Y'all can work this out at your seats and you can figure this out. If you took half of the perimeter of Khufu's pyramid, half the perimeter of Khufu's pyramid, and divided it by its height, it's equal to 3.14. Do the math. Don't believe it. I don't want you to. 755, if you round it out, 755, no, each one is 755 feet, 0.88, 0.77, 0.43. Now, to find the perimeter, it's 4s. It's adding all four sides, or it's 2 times L plus W, or however you want to work it out. But if you took half of the perimeter of Khufu's pyramid and divided it by its height, it's equal to 3.14. That's great, isn't it? Let's take it one step further. Because when I studied geometry another way. How did we look for pi? For the most part, at least I did. Pi is equal to what? Circumference divided by the diameter. In other words, we searched for pi in a circle. But I just showed you pi in a square. So what was our ancestors doing up there? They were squaring the circle and rounding the square. Which takes a mathematical mind into a whole nother understanding of the principles of calculations and formulations. You have to be thinking on a certain level to even think to go there. African people were doing this. Did not look like the present people that dominate Egypt today. Look more like the people in Ghana than the people. Cognitive dissonance. Taking Egypt away from Africa is like beheading a human life. Egypt was the mouthpiece, Africa was the brain. After Africans were born in the Great Lakes region, each and every one of us in this room, if you Japanese, if you're indigenous, if you're Nigerian, you're an African. Every human being here is an African. In fact, you could take 2 people from Nigeria, 1 person from Sweden, you could pull back the skin, and the 1 Nigerian and a Swede could have more in common than the 2 Nigerians. When you get down into beyond the skin. We've not been taught this in our classrooms. There's no such thing as an interracial marriage. Because there's only one race. Inter gives you the impression that there's more than one. You can have an intercultural marriage, but you can only have an intra-racial marriage. A relationship within the race of one. And that race is the human race. And that human race was born, raised, cultured, educated. sustained in Africa. And then after Africans got their show together, then they took it on the road and peopled the planet. And because of the lack of sunlight, in relationship to the skin complexion, in relationship to the hair texture, in relationship to the width of the nose, the morphology, and the phenotypical look of the individual, this African family then branched out from dark black to light black. But there's only one family. And all of this knowledge came out of the study of cosmology. And once we get an understanding of cosmology as it relates to who we are, you know, the Great Spirit in many of the different systems that we look at, it's like the universe is like a massive ocean. And each and every one of us is like a drop of water from that ocean. And so the idea is, what part of the drop of water isn't the ocean, and what part of the ocean isn't in the drop of water? So that when our holy books tell us that we are created in the image of God, then we can understand that that image of God, that in fact we, each and every one of us, we are God having a human experience. And cosmology teaches us this. The other thing I just want to tell you is that when you look at every major religion, the symbols of every major religion deals with astronomy. Whether you deal with the Christian cross, whether you're dealing with the Star of Ost, or whether you're dealing with the half moon crescent, all astronomy. Why? When you look at every church, every cathedral, they all are facing in the direction of the same scientific principles that come out of ancient Egypt. When you look at it, all of it is cosmological. And yet when I ask children, I ask people, have you ever studied astronomy? They tell me no. Well, how can you know who you are if you have not studied who you are? And I think this leads to some of the confusion that we have on our planet. So, what I'd like to do, if I can, is it all right if I, so should I go back there and do it? Oh, you have my computer? What I'm going to do, here's a couple of things. Would I be able to put my piece back in here, the flash drive? Yeah. Can everybody see that by chance? Yes. Okay, what you're looking at is an excerpt that comes out of a book. And the book is entitled Kush, Nubia, Jewel of Kush. And I just want to talk to you a while about this concept because we have so many different names for the ancient world. We break it up into all sorts of different areas. And basically, I was asked to teach a course on Egypt, and I said that I could not teach a course on Egypt if I did not teach a course on Kush. Because there just is no way to understand who the Kemites or the Egyptians were if you don't understand Kush. The Kushites are one people that I look at as the developers of civilizations and culture. And so for us to be able to go back and understand this, I just want to show you a couple of slides here as it relates. And I open up my class by explaining to students that the great civilization of Kamene will never be understood, cannot be understood, if you do not unite the nations of the countries we today call Sudan, Ethiopia, Djibouti, Eritrea, Somalia. Can't understand it. And that is why, to my understanding, when we are looking at and dealing with people on television who are saying that aliens built the pyramids, we are dealing with the most extreme form of cognitive dissonance. Because these folks just can't handle that. They can't handle, like Jack Nicholson said, you can't handle the truth. To be willing to go out into space and find someone you never saw, don't know ever existed, give them credit for something that physically exists on the earth, and yet see it all over this planet in African lands, would say, they didn't do it. Something's up here. We got to work on the mentality. Because you can see the perfection of the pyramids, which, by the way, are cosmologically connected, because the reason why the pyramids were built was in order to be able to follow the different seasons in order to grow food better. To grow food better meant you thought better. To thought better meant you ate better, and you brought the civilization up to higher levels of understanding and consciousness. So the study of the heavens was very important. The Aten text, written or rewritten during the 18th dynasty, was a very important document that spoke about the role of the sun in life on the planet. It's called the Hindu the Aten. You'll never understand. It's called Beheading Africa. You're taking away its head. You're taking away its thought, because in Kamene, the reason why Kamene was so very important was because it was so dry. And the creations and inventions of the people were able to weather the test of time, because when you go into Abyssinia or Ethiopia, when you go into inner Africa, you have monsoons that, if you think the rainy season between what, December and something here, we're ready to go into the April showers bring May flowers back in New York. That's our rainy season. But that's nothing compared to the monsoons of inner Africa. Those rains came down, I mean, you could hardly even have, you wouldn't be able to have umbrellas. You'd be running out of umbrellas all the time. Rain come down so hard, it collapses your umbrella. And so documents that you create, statues and structures that you create don't last in that environment. But when they got up close and near what we now today call Kamene or Egypt, because of the dryness of the land, everything was able to stay for a long period of time. And the evidence of it is, look, the pyramids are still there. And many of the writing materials are still there, because dryness keeps and preserves what you create. So the Africans were just moving along Hapi. They were just moving along the Nile River in order to get to a better spot to be able to observe the heavens and to record and to keep for all time their recordings. And they got so deep, they found out how to carve it on walls. And for those of you who have been to Kamene to see the carvings on the walls of Kamene, this is why when I came into this room and I looked around, I felt like I was back in the temples of Kamene. That's why I say this is not a center, this is a temple. Sister has developed a temple here. You're going to support this center? I'm sure you're doing it. But you've got to continue the life of this center, this temple. This is one of the finest buildings I've been in. See, y'all think, oh, a lot's going on in New York. And I like to think so. I lived there all my life, but we don't have no worldly temple in New York. We have folk that are temples that feel the beat of the world, but this is a beautiful place. And this is what the walls look like. This is why it's so indigenous. This is why when I was here, I was home looking at the scarab and the pyramids and Ras Safarai and Bob Marley and Aunt Nessima. The greatest concert I ever went to was when Bob Marley opened for the Isley Brothers in Washington, D.C. I don't think I came down off the cloud since then. The second best concert I ever went to was when Bob Marley's last concert
when Bob Marley opened up for the Commodores in New York. I was first introduced to Bob Marley in 1975. Natty Dread. I saw a brother with them dreadlocks. I never saw nothing like that in my life. I said, I got to listen to this. And I was transformed. Not since Malcolm had I been moved by an individual as that brother moved. Powerful brother. Powerful brother. Cosmological in nature. The early pyramids we find in Inner Africa. Please, my sister. This is the Peters projection map, by the way. This Peters projection map is exactly how the Earth actually looks. The one to your left was done for mercantiles. That's why it's called mercantile. The one on the right was done by a man by the name, it was a German cartographer, a map builder. And he took the pictures that were taken from outer space that show you exactly how the planets look. As you look, Africa is much bigger. South America is much bigger. Australia is much bigger. India is much bigger. Peters projection map. Google it online. They also have individual continents with the map also to show you the size of the actual continents. The mercantile map is not reliable. It was good for its time, but now the Peters map is the best map to have. The early family is going to go up into what we call the Rift Valley. The Rift Valley is going to travel up through what we call Mozambique. And it's going to travel all the way up through the origins. And inside the Rift Valley, you have the Happy Valley, or what's called the Nile Valley. And inside the Happy Valley, or the Nile Valley, you have the Happy River, or the Nile River. And so you can see on the left-hand side, that's basically what it looks like. It goes right up into what we today call Israel. The land of Israel yesterday was called Palestine. But the day before yesterday it was called Canaan, the black land. The Rift Valley is the road that Africans took when they were born in the Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania region, at the foothills of the mountains of the moon. You have parts of Central Africa, what would basically be the eastern fringe of Central Africa, and the southern fringe, or the northern fringe of South Africa. That's where the human family was born. And they're going to observe the heavens. They're going to understand certain things. And the glue of every society, the feminine principle, the woman, is going to begin something very interesting. This African woman is going to begin to realize that within her, see, necessity is the mother of invention. The question is, what reason does a man have to count? Naturally. Doesn't really have a reason. Or what reason does a woman have to count? She has a life cycle. She has something that happens to her naturally that is going to demand for her to prepare her life. She's going to structure, and she's going to come to realize that this cycle is a 28, 29, 30-day cycle. And she's going to start to count. That's going to be the birth of mathematics. The very first thing you teach children in the classroom, I'm a kindergarten, pre-kindergarten teacher. My license is early childhood. The first thing that I teach children are symbols, which are numbers. Numbers. That builds for all the other mathematics. Addition, subtraction, commutative property, the associative property. Leads to the algebra, the geometry, trigonometry, and the calculuses. But the beginnings of math is in number recognition. Women started that. See, this is where the brothers get tight, Joe. Because I was with you with that culture thing, but now you're getting into this thing that's very personal. Women looking up into the heavens, notice that there's a celestial line that also has a 28 29, 30-day cycle. She, this African woman, is going to recognize that it's going to have an impact on her liquid systems. Hey, if you go to the Pacific Ocean and check out if you go out on that little path that you go all the way out there for, I was there on that side, and I saw them waves. The Pacific Ocean does things that the Atlantic doesn't do, let me tell you, because I live near Orchard Beach, and that's the Atlantic Ocean. That river's wild out there. That ocean, okay, those waves come, and I was told that when the moon is out, don't even go out there. Because the moon has an impact on that water. Just like the moon has an impact on the systems, liquid systems. There was a relationship that was developed. And she began to notice that just like her cycle went through 4 cycles, 4 different ways, she noticed that the moon also went through 4, waxing, the waning, the full, and the new. Just like she went through the same. So she started, in conjunction with counting, she started to develop a relationship with the lunar cycle. And the lunar cycle is the fundamental principle upon which all calendars are built. So sisters, you invented science. And I thank you so much. But let me also thank some of the sisters that were kind enough to let a brother sit in front of them and learn math. I do believe if you had recognized what we would have done to it afterwards, you may never have let us sit in front of you. But I do thank you for letting us sit there. But women invented math. The development of math, development of science is going to go back into the relationship of the calendrical system that is going to build the foundations of cosmology. And that's why we have to study cosmology. We have to teach our children cosmology. Here at the World Beat Temple, or Yaguni, the World Beat Temple needs to have classes for children in cosmology, in the study of the heavens. Understand what black holes are, what galaxies are, what clusters are, what superclusters are. Understand the patterns, because you see, we wouldn't be going through all this global warming phenomenon if we understood global warming was coming anyway. We didn't create global warming, it was coming anyway. The only thing that humans did was they put up so much garbage and pollution in the air, we're suffocating. But the earth has been getting warm, just like it's going to get a little chilly again. We'll have another ice age pretty soon. This is just the way the world cycle. It's a cycle, just like we cycle. Everything is cycle, nature is cycle. This is just the way the world is. So we're wrestling and wondering about all of this when it was going to happen anyway. So in inner Africa, in the cosmology, in places such as what we today call Sudan and in Ethiopia, what was created and what was developed is something known as ring tumuli, or tumulus, singular, tumuli is plural. Basically, those are sundials. The sundials were created to be able to, on a smaller level, be able to tell the time of day because of the way in which the shadows reflect when the sun is shining on one side of the ring tumulus. Tells you what time it is. What's the evidence of that? I tell children, go to the beach. See, you all have a good opportunity to do this because you can do this 24/7, 365.25. We only have June to August because even the beach is closed, so we can't even go out there we want to. We have this amongst us to see. I tell people, go to the beach, and people who want to be able to get a suntan, when the sun is in the east, you'll see them like this, because they want to get the dynamics of the sun. As the day goes on, this is the east, that's the west. What's going to happen is that they're going to start to position themselves going this way, and this way, and this way, and this way. Because they know that they do not, and then what they'll do to check to make sure they're in direct alignment with the sun is they'll look to their left, look to their right to make sure they're not casting a shadow. They are living ring tumuli.
And if you study it carefully, like I tell children, if you study it carefully, you literally can look on the beach and look at someone that's doing it, and you can tell what time of the day it is. Just by the way in which they're positioned on the beach. You can tell what time it is. And the same is true with the ring tumulus. The growth and the development of the ring tumulus is going to become the pyramids. But the pyramids are going to be able to chart the seasons as opposed to just the time of day. And then they're going to perfect the pyramid, and they're going to create what's called the tekenu, or what is called the obelisk. Yeah, you got one right down there at that mall. You go to that mall down there? What is it called? Westfield? Say again? Horton Plaza? You see that tekenu, that blue thing that come up there like that? It look like a Washington Monument. They got one up in Vatican City. They got one in Central Park. They stole them and brought them all over the world. Not that one out in the mall, they built that one. Cosmology is the key. Please, my sister. Okay, here's the Great Lakes region. It's where the human family was born. All returned back to this area right here, the Great Lakes region. It's where all the human family was born. Make no difference who you are, where you come from. This is the only place, the word is, may not be pronouncing it the way in which some people do, autochthonous. A-U-T-O-C-H-R-O-N-O-U-S. Autochthonous. There are a lot of different ways of saying it, but the spelling is A-U-T-O-C-H-R-O-N-O-U-S. Autochthonous. It means that you come up out the soil. It means that you come up from that land. The only place where the human family is autochthonous is in this Great Lakes region. So, what we're going to look at and what we're going to develop, looking at this concept, is I would like to look at 3 cosmologies, and I'd like to talk to you about it. I have brought DVDs with me. For those that would like to go deeper inside of it. But I want to talk to you about these 3 because I think that they're very important to somewhat understand. And the first one that I want to deal with is not so much the first one written, but it's the first one that becomes a primary source for us. Because the thoughts of this came out of the Congo. Congo is the area where you're going to get the first cosmology. However, in Kemet, during the 25th dynasty, there was a pharaoh by the name of Shabaka. Shabaka went into what we today call Memphis in Egypt. Menefer is another name, Hikupatar is another name. He goes into this area, we today call it Memphis. And in Memphis, he's going to come upon a document that's wormy. It's either written in leather or it's written in papyrus. We don't know which, because we know they carved in leather too. And they wrote on walls. And what's going to happen is that Pharaoh Shabaka is going to have his scholars read it. And they're going to find this to be such an important document that they're going to want to rewrite it. Shabaka is going to say, it's such an important document that we want it written for all time and all space, never to be lost, the valuable world and works of our ancestors. So he has it, he commissions it to be written in stone. You know, when we say written in stone, it means that's the final word. Well, that's where we get that proverb from. The idea of being written in stone means, hey, this is the final word. This is it. I'm not going any further with this. He's going to rewrite it in stone.
We're going to come about it through when Britain goes into Egypt. And Lord Spencer is going to come upon this, buy it, and eventually he's going to give it to the British Museum. I have a DVD where I'm doing a class in London in front of the Hiawatha stone. It was something that I was looking for years. I first studied the Memphite text, or the Hiawatha stone, in 1975, but my goal in life was to finally get to the British Museum to be there face to face with this document, because it's the primary source. It's not just the primary source, it's a secondary source. And the important thing about that is that a primary source is the Memphite text. In that sense, the Hiawatha stone is not a primary text. However, the fact that he is rewriting the primary text makes it a secondary text on a primary text. So the importance of the Hiawatha stone is that it is a primary text that demonstrates a mastery of African cosmology as it relates to approximately 710 BC. This is when Hiawatha, somewhere in this area, not too much into dates. I'm concerned about dates because dates will change, but chronology remains the same. I like chronology. I'm not too caught up in dates, so I'm concerned about that concept. So, he rewrites it. The Hiawatha stone is written in 4 sections. The first section is written 2 lines across the top. Then the philosophy of the Hiawatha stone is written vertically in 3 vertical lines. The 2 horizontal lines have the history of the Hiawatha stone. It talks about how Hiawatha came upon the document and how he asked for it to be commissioned and how he talked about this being the great works of his ancestors. Now, let's stop for a minute and think of this concept. From the time that it is said that it is written until the time that Hiawatha rewrites it, that's one time period on the timeline. Now let's take the period when Hiawatha rewrites it in March 2013. More time elapsed between when it was written and Hiawatha rewrote it than when Hiawatha rewrote it and today. That's how ancient this document is. Need to say that again? Yeah. Memphite text is written thousands of years ago along the Happy River, speaking of a cosmology, speaking about how the world came into existence. Thousands of years later, Hiawatha, 25th dynasty, 710 BC, is going to come upon this worm-eaten document and is going to order it, commission it to be rewritten. That's the timeline from when it was written, Memphite text, to when Hiawatha rewrites it. One timeline. Second timeline is when Hiawatha rewrites it in March of 2013. Timeline. More time elapsed here. This was a longer period than when Hiawatha rewrote it and today. So that when Hiawatha is talking about his ancestors, and we are talking about Hiawatha being our ancestors, the ancestors that Hiawatha is rewriting is older to him than Hiawatha is to us today. This is a primary, secondary source talking of the cosmology, of how the universe came into existence, and nothing is being taught today that's not on that stone. In fact, there are principles of science that are in the stone that's not in our astronomy books. And the way I know it is because I was one of the readers of the curriculums in science that came into the Board of Education. So I'm familiar with many of the publishing houses and their books on science. And I can tell you my research of the Hiawatha stone was 1975. It's so powerful that if we as an everyday people understood the principles that our ancestors were talking about, I believe, personally, we'd be living a much better life. I really do. I believe if we understood the real principles, I think we'd be at peace with ourselves and each other. I think what the world wars that have gone on and the world wars that are going on today, the feelings that we have towards each other, you know who your brother and your sister is. And you would not treat them any differently than you want to be treated yourself, because of the principles of the cosmology of life, the spirit of life. The ultimate love that we have for self is the love that we give to other people. But when you don't know who you are, you don't respect yourself, how are you going to respect someone else? That's why cosmology on another level is so important to us. Will we have exceptions to the rule? Of course, because I don't speak in absolute. Only Sith Lords speak in absolute. That's a joke for only people that study Star Wars, that's all. I don't speak in absolutes. There are exceptions to all rules, but I'm saying that the world that we would live in, if we understood the world and how beautiful it is, how beautiful each and every one of us is. And that's what the cosmological story of the Hiawatha stone is saying about people and about the creations of the Creator. And in these three philosophies, let's go back, let me talk to you about philosophy number one. Philosophy number one is called the primate of the essences. The primate of the essences. And in this story, our ancestors say that in the beginning, in fact, they say, before the beginning began, and before existence existed, all things were in harmony in the waters of Nun. And they drew two wavy lines, symbolizing the Nun, the waters. They said at some appointed time, at some anointed time, rising up out of the waters of Nun, came the primordial hill called Ptah. Ptah. P-T-A-H. Through the union of matter and energy, because Nun is matter, Ptah is the conversion of potential energy that was in the waters. Now, let me stop here for a moment. I have DVDs. There is no way that I could demonstrate for you what I'd like to at this point in time. But I want you to follow along with me on a visual level, what our ancestors are saying. Through matter, matter we teach in science has two characteristics. Can you help me out with those two characteristics? What is matter? This is science, third grade science. See, I blame your teachers. Either that or y'all shot, one of the two.
Energy and mass.
Say again?
Energy and mass.
Wait, say again?
Energy and mass.
Well, that's close. That second piece that you said.
Mass.
It has mass. What else? It has mass, and what else? Energy is going to come right after this. But first you need matter. Matter has mass, and there's another principle of matter. It has mass, and it, say again, it takes up space. Thank you. It has mass, it has weight, and it takes up space. In other words, right here I'm standing. If you all wanted to get this way, you could not go through me. I'm taking up space. Ptah, the conversion of energy in the waters of Nun. Because I'm going to make a comparison to what we teach in science today, because this is what we teach. There's nothing that I'm saying to you, except our ancestors in Kamene used an analogy, they used an allegory, they used a mythological story that cloaked a scientific principle in reality. It was the metaphysics. Meta means before. What exists in the spiritual world. Metaphysics is the physics of the spirit that exists before. Metaphysics, metaphor, mythology, the story behind the reality. What is potential energy? See, they told you this was going to be interactive, right? See, I'm having a class. I can't help it. I miss being in the classroom, so you know I got to do this like a class. There we go. Energy at rest. Potential. A match has potential. You strike it, it becomes fire, it becomes kinetic. And kinetic energy is what? Energy in motion. Okay? Pata. Pata is, in science, what we call the Big Bang. Written on Shabbat stone thousands of years ago. Rising up out of the Nun, the matter, through the energy of conversion, comes Atum, that sits atop Pata, attaches himself to Pata, and calls all things into being. Making molecules, the formulations of things, bringing atoms together. See, y'all thought atom meant, no, cognitive dissonance. Okay? Atom. Atom means creative utterance. It doesn't mean undivided. It doesn't mean indivisible. Because we've already divided it up into protons, neutrons, and electrons. And we've even broken that down into quarks and leptons in Yang and Mills fields. We've already broken that down. So, I mean, that's already, so we know it's not indivisible. But what it is that it is a creative utterance. It's a creative word. It's calling things into being. That's powerful, isn't it? That's what I want to teach in our classrooms. That's what I want to teach in the World Beat Temple. That's what I want y'all to teach when you go back where you live. This is what our ancestors did. They understood the principles of life. That's the first principle. That's the first philosophy of the Shabbat. First philosophy. Got three things there. They're all the same thing. Nun, Pata, and Atum are all the same, but they are manifestations of the same thing in three forms in order to bring forward life. One thing had to become three things. And this one thing united itself. Follow what I say. United itself. It united three things. So it became a what? A tri-unity. Okay? It was the original and first Trinity. Original. The Nun, Pata, Atum. Matter, energy, and creative utterance. Calls things into being. Second philosophy. Vertical line. It's called the essences of pre-existing order and arrangement. Science calls it the Odot, calls it the gods of chaos. But for those who understand principles of life, God doesn't create chaos. God creates a condition that is waiting to be ordered and arranged. So they are essences of pre-existing order and arrangement. The second philosophy. Essences of pre-existing order and arrangement. And by the way, if you want me to repeat anything, if you want a spelling, please feel free to ask me. Because this is how I operate. I believe that, again, if I may stick a pin, as they say, I have learned in education, particularly working with our children, I never wait for a question and answer period. I'll have them, but I don't depend on that, because there are times that when the iron strikes, when your neurons are fired, you need to be able to understand what fired them at that moment. not later on. Because if you wait until the end of this presentation to ask your question, 1, you may not ask it. 2, you may forget it. And 3, it may come out differently then than it would have come out when you first fired it up. I like interaction. I'm not into me talking and you listening, and I'm a different, I don't roll like that. So if you need points of clarification, please feel free to let me know. You want a spelling? Can you say that again? Is there another way you can say it? Because everything I am going to say to you is going to be built on what I said just before. And if for any point, myself included, because this happens to me too, so feel free to do that. Pre-existing order and arrangement. The story says that Atum, creative utterance, is going to call 4 pairs into existence. 4 pairs. I'm tripping now. I have cognitive dissonance because my mind cannot grasp or embrace a concept where there is only a male God. For every God, there's a goddess. I cannot handle a male-only God. My mind I have cognitive dissonance. Okay, want me to read that again? That's what happened to my mind. It's disharmony of what I know. Because first of all, scientifically, I know that the Creator made it so that there are more women on the planet than men. How is that possible? How do I know that for a fact? Because women have 2X, men have 1X, 1Y. Men were meant to be outnumbered 3 to 1. Come on, brothers, that's the way it's rolling. So I'm not upset with that either. In fact, I'll tell you something else. Not only am I not upset with that, I can see why it makes real good sense. Because in order to keep the planet populated, you need to have the Creator God always in majority. It makes a lot of sense to have more women than men. There are 3 types of DNA. There's a mitochondrial DNA that mothers give to all their children. That's how we know life started in Africa. Mitochondrial DNA. All mothers give that to both males and females. Then you have the mDNA, which is the nuclei DNA, which is given to all human beings. And then you have the Y DNA. That's only handed down from father to son. It's called the Y DNA. That's why women don't have the Y chromosome. Science. I want academic excellence for our children. All of our children. Not some, all of our children. However, culture is very important. So, I'm going to tell you the 4 pairs. But now I want to give you the culture of why this is important. There's an article written by a psychologist from California. You all may know him. His name is Dr. Wade Knowles. Dr. Wade Knowles. N-O-B-L-E-S. Dr. W-A-D-E. He was teaching up, I believe, in San Francisco. I'm not sure exactly. Great. Am I right? Okay. He wrote an essay in a book entitled Infusion of African and African American Content in the School Curriculum, edited by another brilliant educational psychologist by the name of Asa G. Hilliard. Here's how he defines culture. Culture, to Dr. Wade Knowles, is the vast structure of behaviors, ideas, attitudes, values, habits, beliefs, customs, language, rituals, ceremonies, and practices peculiar to a particular group of people, which provides them with a general design for living and patterns for interpreting their cultural reality. The system of culture teaches the people to recognize phenomena and to respect certain logical relations amongst phenomena. Culture gives meaning to reality, and as such, culture has the power to compel behavior and the capacity to reinforce ideas and beliefs about human functioning, including issues of educational achievement and motivation. Culture is the invisible medium in which all human functioning occurs. It is important to note, nothing human happens outside of culture. Culture is to the human as water is to the fish. It is our total environment. Education as well as curriculum development are cultural phenomena. Culture is therefore the invisible dimension of all curriculum. Hence, just as the nature of the water, whether it is salt or fresh or polluted, influences the reality or the survivability of particular types of fish, so too do different cultural systems influence the reality of particular groups of people. All of our training and education are bound by what we call customs or professional conventions, which are nothing more than cultural traits or rituals. Culture is like our water. And like the fish out of water, some humans can be out of their culture and thereby act inappropriately or fail to thrive. Culture is like the electricity that illuminates the light bulb. We can only know or understand the electricity by what it does. If we are going to have a practice of education that's appropriate for African and Hispanic American children, then it should be clear that we need to understand the electricity or the culture that's going to guide that practice. As an educator in the New York City Board of Education for 31 years, our children are not being taught who they are. They are practicing the values, the interests, and principles of other people. We do respect that. Because I know some of y'all like George Washington. I know he's some of our forefathers. He ain't my forefather. And as an African and as a native, I'm going to be honest with you, okay? Can we drop it like it's hot? George Washington held over 300 African people against their will, mistreated them horribly. He sent Captain Sullivan into Onondaga territory, which happens to be one of the territories of my mother's blood. Captain Sullivan into Onondaga territory to destroy the Onondaga people because they refused to side with the British or the Americans during the American Revolution. He almost decimated the peoples of the Onondaga territory of northern New York and southern Canada. Now, what value do I have to teach my children about George Washington? Of what interest is George Washington? And what principles did he represent that I think should be replicated in my child? I ask you to think about that, because as people who may be of his culture, you may have quite a liking to him. But to someone who has been mistreated by him, historically, that is, I'd have to be out of my mind to teach my children anything positive about George Washington. Because we all, throughout our cultures, have our enemies that have done great harm. And for that cultural group to teach that person as a great person to those people, that's horrible. It's detrimental to the minds of the people. Thomas Jefferson. Everybody talk about Sally Hemings, the black woman, the black child. If if Thomas Jefferson was doing today what he was doing then, he would be in prison as a pedophile. And not just that. Thomas Jefferson's Sally Hemings was the half-sister of his wife. Because Thomas Jefferson's father-in-law had an illicit relationship with an African woman, and she gave birth to Sally Hemings. But let me drop something else on you while we're here. Don't get too caught up with Sally Hemings, because half the children on Thomas Jefferson's plantation were his. He got around to every child on the plantation. He had a thing for black children. That's Thomas Jefferson. As an African person who has ancestry, how could anybody expect me to feel good about him? And if you feel upset, if you're having cognitive dissonance about what I'm saying, I have to ask you, well, what are your intentions towards me and black people in general? You should be telling me, I don't blame you. You shouldn't. And even those who may be of European descent, keep in your mind, he may be your color, but if you're right, he's not your kind. This is what's happening in our educational system today. We have families living in Thomas Jefferson Housing Complex, George Washington Avenue. Think of the psychological dimension of what's happening to people as it relates to their values and their interests and their principles. And if your heart is of ma'at and of balance, then you think twice about what you expect people to do. Maybe you're a hero. I'm not going to say nothing. But we all have to be sensitive to each other's heroes and sheroes. What could be one person's friend is another person's dire enemy. And in the world that we're living in today, moving into 2014, we have to understand this. The indigenous people have gone through a great deal of turmoil, pain, and they need to be freed of that. First, of course, we all must free ourselves. But everyone's talking about illegal immigration. Now, in California, of course, it's according to who you ask who the illegal alien is. Because I know some indigenous people that will tell you it's the European that's the illegal alien. Think about what I'm saying. Open yourself up to another world. Don't look at yourself as who you are. Look at yourself as the reality. The fact that we would have laws and try to build up stone walls against the human family tells the world something about the way we're thinking. And it's something that we have to go away with when we go into our classrooms and we're teaching our children. And we're trying to make connections with our people and with our children in the classroom. The second philosophy, I just thought I'd stick a pin and go there for a little while. The second philosophy is called the essences of pre-existing order and arrangement. Atum is going to now call into being 4 pairs, male and female. They are going to be called the netra nu. Netra, neter, nature of something. Nature, neter. U or neternu is plural. When you add a U in the Kamene language, it becomes plural. So neteru, N-E-T-E-R-U, becomes plural, neter. Like we add an S, in this language, you add a U. Neteru nu. Nu meaning nun, the waters, the nature in the water. Atum is going to call 4 pairs into existence. Just follow who these 4 pairs are. Call Nun, Nunet. That's the first pair. Nun, Nunet. When they add a T, the T becomes female. Nun, Nunet. Nun is water or matter, and Nunet is space or the heavens. Now, didn't we first say that Nun was before the beginning began? But because of the essence of it being in existence before existence existed, it didn't have a name. It needed Atum to be ushered forward to reflect back on itself to give it a name. So our ancestors called it Nun only because psychologically, as the writers of the document, did they know that they were going to reflect back and call it Nun. This is now language arts that we're talking about. Nun, as Nun, in the very beginning, before all time, space, did not have a name. But when it ushered forth Ptah and Atum, Atum looked back on its origins and gave it a name and called it Nun, which is matter, water. Nunnet is space. Because everything in the universe is made up of what? It's either taking up space or it's not taking up space. Ha-ha-het. H-U-H, H-U-H-E-T. Ha represented infinity, those things that have no end, and Ha-het represented finite. Okay. Ha-ha-het, infinity, finity. Ha, infinity, male. Ha-het, female, is boundary. Has an end. Third pair, Kuk, coquette. K-U-K, K-U-K-E-T. Kuk represented the darkness. Coquette represented the light. Keep in mind the Bible story. Keep in mind Genesis. Let's keep on going. Kuk is male. Coquette is female. Amen, Amenet. A-M-E-N, A-M-E-N-E-T. Amen represents the hidden. And Amenet represents the revealed. Now I know we've been introduced to that word, Amen. But linguistically, it can't mean so be. Because so be it is a sentence. It be so. You have a subject, a verb, and an adverb. Go back into the Latin dictionary. Go back into any dictionary that will talk to you about the Latin language, and you will never be able to get a derivative of the word amen, meaning so be it. What the Christian church did was just snatch that word out, meaning the hidden force of God, and put it at the end of their prayers. Let's go to Puerto Rico. You want a sandwich? Habla español. Anyway. Ajá. Más o menos. When you go to Puerto Rico, you want a sandwich. What do you ask for? Jamón y queso. Ham and cheese sandwich. What do you ask for when you want sandwich? Sandwich. Because sandwiches didn't come from Puerto Rico. So when sandwiches were introduced to Puerto Rico, they didn't have a word for it, so they just placed it in their language. And that's where amen comes from. There was no word for amen in the Latin language, so they just took it out of the Kamene language and placed it in their language. Like we have words that are in other languages. Because in our existence, we did not have words for that. When introduced to it, we just took that word and placed it in our language, and what we say is English is really not, but it's just our way of interpreting something introduced to us. Please.
I don't know how to phrase this, but why did they pick a word that means hidden to put at the end of prayer? Wouldn't they choose a word that means revealed?
Well, no, in terms of the word itself, the hidden concept of God, it's the hidden magnificence of the Creator. In the word amen, as it relates to the Kemetic legacy, it means the hidden essence of the Creator, that which you will never see. But you know when we say that God will always be with you, God be with you,
Let the Force be with you. No, that's Star Wars. God be with you. See, I'm into Star Wars. I'm a Trekkie by heart. That's the whole. The word itself means the hidden power of the Creator. You'll never see it, but it's there. And so in prayers, the word Amen is introduced as a final call for that hidden. And now again, I realize that there are probably other peoples of Christian doctrine that would interpret that differently than I. But when I think of what the word actually means coming out of the African Kamene legacy, when I see the power and the potency of it, and then I apply it to someone else, I would imagine they wanted to use it the same way it was used within the context of where they got it from. So that hidden essence of the Creator, that unseen, that you will never see. See, this is why when people say, I saw it, no, you didn't see God. You know, but I saw God, but no. It's just that you saw something that you didn't see before, but it wasn't God, you just didn't see it. You didn't see it. You cannot see the unseen. That's what makes it unseen. You see, we think we saw it because it's something so magnificent, but really you didn't see it. What you saw was what could be seen, but not the unseen. That's why there's a specific word, unseen. And that's the beauty of the ancient world, because they knew that they could have essence of something and not have to see it, not have to hear it, not have to feel it, not have to taste it, not have to smell it, but they knew it was there because the essence of the Creator is in all things, all places, all ways. Please.
The Bible also says, I am the God, Amen.
Okay. Okay. Please, brother, you can say that out loud.
So even the Bible, it says, I am the God, Amen.
Okay. The Testament of Amen. Okay. Thank you. Please. I'm sorry, say it again. What it is? Cock is darkness, and coquette is light. Amen is hidden, Amenet is revealed. Ha is infinity, Hahet is finity. Nun is water, and Nunet is space. They are known as the uncreated creations, Nectar Nun. Now, think about this. Think about how people think, because I marvel at how people think. I marvel at how children think, in particular, because they're pure. Being kindergarten teacher, if you ever want to know about yourself, just hang around 5-year-olds. They will tell you right straight up, because they're too pure to lie. They're not trying to put on any pretense. See, when we get to a certain age, you say, oh, no, I don't think I can say that. I'm not lose my job, or I don't think I want to say that. But children, they're straight up and tell you right to your face. That's the advantage of being very young or being very old, because you don't care. You just say what you want. You know, the elders are around you, you know, and they'll look at you and say, do you know what your problem is? You're stupid. That's your problem. See, when we're at this age, we say, well, you know, I think you may have had a better day before when you thought like that. The elders say, no, that's not the problem, honey. You're stupid. That's the problem. Please, did I see another hand or question? Please, brother.
You said the word coquette.
Coquette.
Coquette. Okay, so it's, what is the spelling again?
K-U-K-E-T.
Okay, fine.
Okay. Now,
my question is, I want to see how that word has evolved, because in English and in French, you have the word coquette. And I'm wondering if that word is taken from the American language, or is this another derivation of a totally different word?
yeah. Don't know, but it could very well be.
Because coquette means flirt.
Yes, okay.
That
Could be, I'm not sure. Maybe through its derivative coming down, it could have transformed into that. Like another very interesting word that we deal with is the word Egypt. And we see Egypt as a word that may not be of African descent, but it really is. It's a derivative. And in languages, what we notice, and I'm sure those of us who are far more expert in language, you can take us through this process.
But what we see is that in the usage of words and in the intermingling of cultures and nation states coming in and out of different things change as time goes on. And the word Egypt we use today to define a certain geographical location, the northeastern region, and that is where the pyramids are and things like that. However, Africans, we talked about Memphis, we talked about Menefer, we talked about this place where there was a tablet, there was a written Memphite text that was worm-eaten in the Shabaka stone, found in Memphis. Menefer, the city of Menefer, Menes, the first pharaoh of the first dynasty. However, Menes named this geographic location that we today call Memphis, he named it because the Hapi or the Nile River ran straight up. When the irrigationists and the builders and the engineers came upon this particular geographic location, they explained to Menes, as according to the tablets found where he's describing the development of this particular geographic location, that it was so important geographically and geometrically and other reasons that he had his irrigationists and his peoples, his scientists, redirect the waters of Hapi. He put an elbow in Hapi, and he built up land where the river once flowed through and created an elbow to go around. And even to this day, that area is still constantly taken care of for fear that the waters will come back. But they rerouted the waters, they redirected the waters, and pushed up, dumped up land, and they created this particular land. Okay, and he built his theocratic capital on this dumped up land that was at one time part of the Hapi, or the Nile River. He called this area Ptah, because it was like the mountain that came out of the waters upon which he was going to build this great theocratic capital. So he called it Hiku-Ptah. Hiku-Ptah. Can I hear you say this? Hiku-Ptah. H-I-K-U-P-T-A-H. Hiku-Ptah. Hiku means the spirit or the essence of something. Ptah means the hill. So it was called the essence or the spirit of the hill. Hiku-Ptah. Greeks come in, adapt this word within their own context of speaking, and they call it Egu-Ptos. Hin-E-Ku-Gu-Ptah-Ptos. So Hiku-Ptah become Egu-Ptos. And using this word Egu-Ptos, 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 Egypt. E is the A, G-Y is the Gu, and the Ptos is the P. So it's still an African word, going back to your statement, brother, that over time, things happen to words. And so today's Egypt was yesterday's Egu-Ptos, but the day before it was Hiku-Ptah. And so this is the derivation of some words that happen, within language, that changes. And so the idea of coquette could very well come out of this concept. And understanding what France was able to do as it relates to the deciphering of the symbology of ancient Kamene could very well have been them who started coquette. And then coquette meaning flirt or whatever. But that means delight. Coquette. Neternu, the uncreated creations. Uncreated creations meaning that they did not come of something, they always existed. Now think of the 8 characteristics, because these 8 characteristics always existed in the waters of Nun, but they did not have a name. And therefore anything without a name cannot have an existence. This is why one of the most stereotypical, prejudicial books that's always on storytelling children's book list is the worst book to ever read, and that's The 5 Chinese Brothers. I banned it from New York City school system. I was put on a team, I said, we can't have it. Why? Because none of the Chinese brothers have a name. So therefore they're non-entities. And also, they all looked alike, and that was the moral of the story, is that none of them got killed because nobody knew who the guilty one was. Stereotypical story. It's always on storytelling. You know, in the boards of education, you know, we always have storytelling contests. And the Chinese, 5 Chinese brothers is always on the list. I said, you better get that, chuck that from the list. That is not acceptable. This is why when you see movies like The Mummy, the one with Boris Karloff, okay, everybody got a name, but the brother is called the newbie. He don't have a name. The newbie. Or you have the butler. That's very stereotypical. Not to have a name means you are not a person. And that's one of the great challenges that we have. And this is why the word Atum is so important in ancient civilizations. Not just African civilization. Indigenous American civilization. In Chinese civilization. Words are very important. That's why I tell young people, hip-hop stars, okay, hey man, I'm feeling, I'm with you. I feel your spirit. Wait. Gotta be careful what you call out. Because what comes out your mouth can never come back. You create what you call. Words are very important. That's why we have to measure our words, and that's why to the Kenites, Atum represented the word. That was very important, the word. Think about this. They're trying to figure out how are they going to depict so that when someone looks at these entities, how can you figure out that they don't have names? How do you figure out that when they get a name, they're uncreated, they've always been around, and in everything that exists in the known and unknown universe, they have 8 characteristics. They're either matter or take up space, or matter or space. They either go on forever or they have an ending. They're either in the darkness or they're in the light, or they're either hidden or they're revealed. The 8 characteristics of everything. Think of what they were saying. I mean, this is deep stuff. I mean, to me, it's deep. I just get thrilled with this stuff. But what's even more thrilling is how did they depict them? How did they draw these individuals? How did they do this? Well, first, the males, Nun, Ha, Kuk, and Amen, they were all frogs. Frogs. Okay? Nunet, Hahet, Kukhet, and Amenet were all cobras, snakes. Now, you can say to yourself, now this is very deep. Why frogs? Why snakes? Yes, absolutely. Well, let's stay with that, brother, because you're on the right track there. The tadpole, over its existence, goes through all of the phases of a human being. Why do you think that in biology class you dissect a frog? In fact, if you took a tadpole and you took a 5-week fetus and stretched the fetus out, it looked just like a tadpole. In utero. Open up the fetus. It's curled up. Open it up. It looks just like a tadpole. Well, now, let's stay with the frog. Because now we've got to figure out what the frog represents. Even to the last week, it gets rid of its tail. So what does the frog? The frog goes through a what? A metamorphosis. So the frog in the waters of Nun represents a male essence of the metamorphosis of all things that come into existence. That's heavy, isn't it? Gee, sometimes I gotta drop it. It's so heavy. It's something else. I mean, the way they thought. I mean, we don't think like that today. I mean, some of us poetically, and yeah, we're there. But I mean, this is just for me, understanding the cosmology. But now let's look at the snake. Now, what does a snake do? It does it sometimes upwards 7 times a year. It shed its skin. But how does it do it? See, teaching children, I would teach children about the frog's life. I have different science activities where we go through the frog's life. And then we talk about human life, and we just make comparisons. And children can get it. Children can get it. Even children can get it, even on the most fundamental level. If you go from the egg to the tadpole to the frog, you don't have to get deep with kindergarten children. If you just take those 3 stages, and then take a human being from when it is the zygote to the fetus to the baby, and you compare those, you can do this comparison with the children. But why a snake and shedding? When a snake is about to shed, it knows that the life that it was living is just about to end. And it goes off to an area all by itself. It segregates itself from the general community. And within the inside of the snake, right under the old skin, a new fresh skin comes forward. When the new skin is intact, and they know that they're ready to move, the snake will move itself to a rough area, a rocky area, and it will slither across that area, and it will cut the old skin, and it will continue forward. It'll go forward to its new life as it leaves its old life behind. And so what could we call that? Resurrection. Metamorphosis, resurrection. That's powerful, isn't it? This is how our ancestors depicted things that they could not actually say. They took forces of nature, natures, and they let them speak for the power of the Creator. Frogs, snakes. But still, let's take it one step further. Because it's the head of the frog, the body of a man. It's the head of Hiawatha, or the cobra, and the body of a woman. How could they depict that they were uncreated? They were drawn or carved without belly buttons. Because without a belly button, it means that you did not come from a woman. And so that's how they depicted this concept of netra nu, the uncreated creations, the essences and metamorphosis of all life and its resurrection. Before it was born, when it was born, and what happened to it after it moved on to the next life. This was in the cosmological story of the Shabaka stone. Now, the third philosophy. The third philosophy of the Shabaka stone is called the essences of order and arrangement. And the essences of order and arrangement now are going to take this story from that point and is going to tell the story pretty much of superclusters, clusters, galaxies, stars, planets, and how life came upon those planets. Atum, remember Atum, the creative word? Atum is going to transform him, herself, into Atum Khepera. Khepera. K-H-E-P-E-R-A. Khepera, the dung beetle, up on that wall right there. See, that's the beauty of this, because I have class right here. I don't even have to say go to a book. I just say look at the wall. That's a wonderful thing. That's why this is a temple, not a center. The dung beetle, Khepera. In the upper hands of Khepera, many times there is the symbol of the sun rolling. The dung beetle rolls dung, puts its eggs in dung. And the dung and the baby, well, let me step back for a minute and tell you, dung beetles live and breathe. They eat cow dung. They eat Heru's dung, or Hathor. Hathor. And Khepera represents the process of becoming. process of becoming. Now, think of us, right? How many times have we said or heard somebody say, I see that there are young people in the audience, so I will refrain from using certain words. Well, we say, I don't want to eat that.
Right.
Why are you always making me eat that? Kepler lives on done. Martin Luther King once said that your character is built during times of conflict and controversy, not comfort and convenience. That your character of who you are is built during your rough times, not your anybody can do the right thing when it's easy, but only a very special person can do it when you're in your rough time. And so, with this in mind, I have learned to appreciate my obstacles in life to the point where I thank the Creator for giving me the rough time, for allowing me another opportunity to prove that I am the man that I say I believe I am. So instead of cursing the winds that blew it to you, bless the winds that haven't brought it to you. And rise above the issue, because it's not what happens to you that's important. It's how you handle what happens to you that's important. And this is what Kepler represented. The process of becoming, all of the rough things that you have to go through, all of the things that are challenging you. Instead of whining and wondering why me, say, oh, I'm so happy it's me. Because now I can do something. I can prove what I say to myself. Because what don't kill you make you strong. I think they had a song about that, didn't they? Kepler, Atum Kepler comes into existence. And what happens to Atum Kepler is now he's going to bring in 4 pairs. He's going to bring in Shu and Tefnut. Shu, male, S-H-U. Tefnut, female. Shu is air. Tefnut is moisture. S-H-U, Shu, air, male. His mate, Tefnut, T-E-F-N-U-T, female, moisture. See, the molecules are getting more defined now. You see, now we're on the third and final philosophy. Now the world is now coming into existence. This is the world that we know today. Shu and Tefnut. And Shu and Tefnut give birth to Nut and Geb. Nut, N-U-T, female, sky. Geb, earth, man. To the ancient Kemites, it wasn't Mother Earth. It was Father Earth and Mother Sky. Earth, Geb, G-E-B, earth, and that was male. And the story goes that Nut and Geb were in a lover's embrace. They were in the process of copulating. Shu comes down and separates Nut from Geb. Okay? Sky and earth, during the Carboniferous age of the earth, when sunlight couldn't get through, air comes down and comes up and creates what? Atmosphere. Atomosphere. Atom. Think about the story. Shu comes down and separates Nut, sky, from Geb, earth. But Nut is pregnant with the sun. She swallows the sun at night and gives birth to it at the day, which is the 24-hour cycle. That is why you see Nut, she's standing over, she got her arms out like this over the earth, and you can see stars all over the front of her body, and you can see the sun going into her mouth, and then you can see it coming out of her in birth. So now you've got nighttime when she swallows it, daytime when she gives birth to the sun and there's sunlight. Now, the story continues. Nut and Geb give birth to Asar, Aset, Nebetet, Seton. Asar, male, primordial father of all things. Aset, the primordial mother of all things. Nebetet, that's why when I see male psychics, I know that anyway. I mean, I barely question the existence of psychics, but Nebetet is the oracle reader. The gift that women have is to be able to be oracle readers. The gift that men have is to know who the oracle readers are. Men can't read. That's why when you see a man set up with his shop there talking about he's going to read your palm, just can't hold it. Say, where your wife? Your wife is going to be able to read. So that Nebetet is the oracle reader, the sister, the feminine. See, you're talking about feminine principles now. You're not talking about people. You're talking about feminine principles. The male power of giving birth, the female power of making birth, the oracle reader, the essence, because each and every one of us has these within us. The oracle reader. It's a feminine principle. And then you have Satan, who is the destroyer of all things. Well, that's where the word Satan came from. Satan, set. That's why when people say to you, when you're acting a certain way, oh, you're set in your ways. That's really what they mean. You may think that, you may think you're doing good things and you're set in your ways, but no. When they say you're set in your ways, that's really not saying something very positive about you. So when somebody says something, they really should say, you have good habits. When you're acting up inappropriately, now you're set in your ways. And then the final birth, Asar and Aset, give birth to Heru. Asar is Osiris. Aset is Isis. Nebetet is Nephthys. And Seton is Setesh. And Heru is Horus. But the African word, Asar, Aset, Nebetet, Seton, and Heru, the resurrection of life, the Son of God. The Son of God. The resurrection. Not S-O-N. S-U-N. Persistence. You are also the Son of God. Each and every one of us is the Son of God. Each and every one of us is God having a human experience. Shabbat. Now the Dogon. When I came in, Sister McKay, I walked in and I just saw this. And I'd like to ask you to do this, please. If you could just pick your chair up and turn it around to face that wall. I was just taken aback when I saw this. Okay? Because this is Dogon, right? The Dogon are a people who live in Mali. In just south, I would say southeast of the bend of the Niger River. Just near Gao and Timbuktu and the universities. These are a people, that Shabbat stone that I just told you about, they took that principle. They claim in their legends to have come from the great river of the east, which is the Nile. They say that they came with a knowledge and a wisdom of the cosmos. The Dogon have a creation story where they say that at one point in time, all things were in the waters of the Numo. Numo. Numo is interchangeable with water. Water is the Nun. Okay? They say that at some point in the creation of the universe, that up out of the Numo came Amma. Amma, which is a combination of Amen and Aton. There are 8 numo, just like there are 8 pairs. Nununet, pahahet, kakaket, amunet. I have DVDs, by the way. No, I keep telling you that because I just want you all to know there's no way I could ever tell you everything I want to tell you because there's so much of this greatness that we really... And to me, this is all of our stories. This is for all of us to understand. No matter what our age, no matter what our culture, no matter what our mindset, if you can get a hold of these stories of the cosmos and understand this story, there are so many things about our lives that could change just by the direction that we take, the decisions that we make. Because I teach our children, life is about choices. But how can you make choices when you don't know what your options are? And for our children, we need to talk to them about their options and about their choices. And cosmology gives you those options. And this is why when I ask our children, did you study astronomy? And they tell me no. It's just so sad because I know that so much of life's story is in the cosmology. As above, so below. As below, so within. And that's why cosmology becomes so important, because you get your options. There were 8 numo, and they were pairs. The 7th and 8th numo, the 7th numo was called Yurugu, because Yurugu was a male principle that would not identify with his female part. So he was incomplete. And in being incomplete, he lived a life to never know his full potential, and that is the Satan in the Kemetic story. The one who is the destroyer of all things because he doesn't know how to put things together, because he has never attached himself to the other side of who he is as a person. And each and every one of us is part male and part female. I got a mama, so I'm half a woman, and I'm a half a man. My daddy decided that I would come out this way, and 5 years before I was born, he decided my sister would come out her way. I am a culmination of both my mother and my father. You are a culmination of both your mother and your father, but you are neither your mother nor your father, but you're the two of them combined. Some of y'all lean towards one or the other. You know, I'm like my daddy, or I'm like my mama, I look like my daddy, I look like my mama. All that's good, but you still got mama in you, no matter how much you may act like your daddy. And this is the story of the Numo. And they say that the Numo came, and they came down as reptilian fish. Now, I don't really believe from my perspective that fish came down here. But I do believe that fish, being the essence of the water, that you could come down as the principle of light and heat energy, because it is in their philosophy that they believe that just like the earth revolves around our sun revolves around their system. Canis Major, the dog stone. Now while we're here, let me tell you something about this group of folk. Okay? 1932, somewhere in that area, 2 French anthropologists and historians come. Name is Griot and Dieterle. And they come down and they sit with the Dogon. And they live with the Dogon for a number of years. There's a book called The Pale Fires. There's another book called Conversations with Ogatamela. And there are 2 other books that deal with the science of the Dogon, very interesting. The Kanaga mask. Every 60 years, the Dogon people have a celebration, and it's called the Sigi ceremony. They celebrate the 50-year rotation of this dwarf star that can't be seen by the human eye, so to speak. It was not seen in Western civilization as a star until 1971. It was found out about in the middle 1800s, 1860, somewhere in that area. And the way they found out was because they saw Sirius A. Now, if you want to find Sirius A, let's say New York, I believe it's the same here in San Diego, in the month of December, if you look to the southeast, you'll see the 3 stars in the belt of Orion. If you look down to what would be your left, bottom, then you'll see a strong shining star. That is Sirius A. But next to Sirius A, you have a teeny little star that's called Potolo. Potolo, P-O-T-O-L-O. Tolo means star. Polo is a grain, which is the smallest grain that the Dogon grows. They knew something was going on because Sirius A wobbled. The only time a star like that wobbles in its size is when something else is interfering with its smooth transition. Briol and Dieterle go and sit with the Dogon, and the Dogon tell them a story about this dwarf star, this little teeny star, Kizi Uzi, the littlest of things. And they say that this little dwarf star is made up of an element known as Sagala, S-A-G-A-L-A, Sagala. Sagala, a thimbleful. If you took a thimbleful of Sagala, it would weigh 2,000 tons, or 80,000 pounds by definition. A thimbleful. Now I know what you're all thinking. How did the Dogon know this? You ask yourself, how could they have seen that star? How could they have seen a star that was invisible to the human eye? Let me take you back to ancient astronomers. Because we're living in the world of illumination. We're living in a world of lights. I want to take you someplace where there are no lights at night. I want to take you to a place that have Bagara cliffs, that have inside caves that you can go in. And I want to tell you a personal story about myself. My biorhythm, some of y'all may be also, I'm a night eye. I'm called a night eye. I come from my father's family throughout all of our generations. We're all night eyes. We operate at night. We don't operate during the day. Our biorhythm is with melatonin, not with serotonin. Okay. My children, 2 daughters, son. They always tried to figure out how I could see them at night in the dark when they were sleeping around. Now when I could see them, I saw them better in the dark than I could see them in the light. Because I used to tell them what they had in their hands. And after a while they say, Daddy, what I got in my hands? And I would tell them, they always were, how did he see that? It's pitch black. But my eyes operate. I personally am a person that sees better in the dark than I do at night. Imagine a human being that lives only in the dark. Never is up during the day. My life demands that I be up in the day. But if you had a society where you were the astronomer of the community, where you only functioned at night, and you lived in the caves during the day, saw no light, your iris is going to grow. That's why when you're in the dark and someone turns on the light, you're going to close your eyes, because your iris has to adjust to 1/4 its size, because when you were in the dark, your iris grew to the size of your eye. That's the opening, right? If your eyes were always in the dark, your iris was always open. Your eye becomes a telescope. Now, I, on a very elementary level, am telling you that I can see better at night during the day. But being in these lights, this messes up my ability to see the way I could see if I was never in the light. If I was in the Bangara cliffs of the Dogon territory, always in the dark, never in the light. Not one day of my life did I ever see light. Think about this. Astronomers dedicated their life to the night world. In Egypt, in Kamene, in China, in the indigenous populations. See, we're living a different lifestyle now, so it's hard to calculate a society that would have that, but a society that supports the astronomer, makes it so that it works for him, that the food, whatever they needed at night was there for them, they would supply it. That's how in my estimation. That's how the Dogon could see stars the way they did. That's how the Kemites could see stars that we're still trying to figure out, because they have night eyes. And not everybody has a night eye. You just can't be a night eye. You've got to be something in your blood system, in your rods and your cones, in your eye makes you a night eye. And you were identified in the community as a night eye. And normally they would bring you through a life system so that all of your children would become night eyes also. And so how they could see a star like that was what made them so powerful. Now, Kanaka mask, Sister Makeda was telling me about a Kachina mask. Now look at the Kachina mask and look at the Kanaka mask. And then tell me there's not some type of cultural sharing. Oh, it's going on here. But this isn't in our American history books. When we study pre-Columbian America, there was such a lively world pre-1492. But it's like everything happened after. Nothing was invented, nothing was created until. Griot and Dieterlen are in Dogon territory at a time when they're celebrating this Sigi ceremony. And wrap up the ceremony. And they're about to put the Kanaka mask that's made one every 60 years now. One every 60 years. They're bringing it in. Griot and Dieterlen are allowed to come in and observe this new ceremony, or this next ceremony, putting the Kanaka mask on this chair made specifically for this mask. And Griot nudges Dieterlen and says, look around. Because when they put this mask on the chair, they noticed that this is the 12th mask in the room. Now let's do the math. One mask every 60 years. There are 12 masks. How long ago did the first mask get in this room?
720.
Say again? 720 years. Let's round out the year to 1930. 1930, subtract that, subtract 720 from 1930. $1210. That's the Malinki Empire. Mansa Musa. That's heavy, isn't it? That's how far back this room goes with Kanaka mask. To the Mansa Musa period. That's heavy, isn't it? No. They tell him we got 2 more rooms like this. Now you're going back to the Pyramid Age in Egypt. You see how much we've been lacking in our history? You see how much we really don't know what's happening in West? Because see, we get caught up in Egypt. Dr. John Henry Clark is my teacher. I met him when I was 12 and a half. He's my teacher. He's who I consider to be my Jegman. Dr. John Henry Clark. And Dr. Clark used to always tell us, Egypt is exotic, but all of Africa is not. There is a city in Nigeria. It is called Irudu. Irudu. There's a book called When We Ruled by Robin Walker. He talks about Irudu, and he talks about an article written in the London Times about this Nigerian city that existed 1000 AD. And it was 100 miles in diameter. And it is believed to be the home of Makeda. They believe that the Queen of Sheba, or Makeda, did not come from Somalia. It came from Nigeria. Research we have to do? Yes. We have a lot of research. Don't believe a word I say. I just want to make you think of all that we haven't been taught about history. about culture. That's the most important. I think the most exciting thing about education is thinking, not sitting and believing. It's about each and every one of us taking what we're experiencing here, take it back and do something. The more said that if you learn something and you can't do anything with it, you're wasting your time learning. That's why one of the areas when I taught children was always a section, objective and aim. I always had what the student will be able to do at the end of the lesson. Not what they will know. I don't care what they know. I want to know what can you do with what you know. We come to presentations, we hear knowledge, we hear, we say, oh, yo, that's heavy, oh, yeah, that's good, I love that, that's great. But what you going to do with it? You got to come to the World Beat Temple and start to show children when they come in that wall. Let them see that wall. Let them see Hiawatha, son of women. They even had a son for women in the Sirius system. Sirius A, Sirius B, and Sirius C. Hiawatha, the son for women. Look at the homes. We spoke earlier about Tekenu. Tekenu is right here on the wall, drawn. Tekenu, or the obelisk. Look at the way the homes look. Look at the way the Tekenu look. And then go to every rocket that you've ever seen go into space. Tell me the difference. And now tell me our ancestors didn't go into outer space. Believe me? Don't believe me. Just look at the rocket. Judge for yourself. Look at the Tekenu. Look at the homes of the Dogon. Look at the fact that this is built on astronomical, cosmological reasons. Those are built for cosmological, astronomical reasons, and rockets go into space for cosmological, astronomical reasons. Is there a connection? You tell me. Let's go back. Let's go real back. Let's go deep inside the African mind. And we'll round out with this, questions and answers, and if you'd like to come and share, whatever you'd like to do. But the Congolese cosmology. The Congolese are the first people. The Congolese are the first people from Congo. They are a people who will develop a way, please, brothers and sisters, if you could just, and we come back around this. This information that I'm going to share with you is coming from a book entitled African Cosmology of the Bantu Congo. African Cosmology of the Bantu Congo, Principles of Life and Living. Is written by a gentleman by the name of Kimbwandende Kia Unseki Fukia. Dr. Fukia. Congolese brother. Brilliant. Appeared to Dr. Theophile Obenga, another brilliant Congolese scholar. He wrote this book, published 1980 and 2000. He taught a course in Congo cosmology. And he decided to write a book about it because there was just so many things he wanted to talk about. He had to do research to create this book. Name is Kimbwandende, Kimbwandende, Kia, Kia, Bunseki, Bunseki, Fukia, Fu-Kiau. Kimbwandende, Kia, Bunseki, Fukia. Just want to give you a wrap around and get back into some Congolese cosmology, purposes of cosmology. But I want to talk to you about language and how he adapts language within the concept. He says in his introduction, Africans love the study of their languages. if they wish to talk honestly about themselves and about who and what they are, for all systems, their codes of their society are coded or tied in their languages. These languages should be studied and used as language of instruction in order to prove their scientific capacity. To study language is the most important process of learning the art of coding and decoding social systems of human society in the world. And basically what that means, at least the way I explain it, is if I were to go to Germany and take a first grade test in the German language on African history, there's a very good chance I might not do well. I don't speak German. I don't know how to decode the symbols. It's the same symbols, same alphabetical letters, but I don't know how to decode it. Does it mean I don't know the answers to the African history questions? No, I don't know how to decode the way in which the symbols are coming at me as German language. And the same is true for our children in our school systems that we say cannot read. That's not true. It's not that they cannot read, it's that they cannot decode. Decoding is just something you can learn. Because I have worked with children where they have said to me, you know, we're going to have to refer this child. I said, no, before you refer the child, let me talk to them, please. And so I will have a child and they'll have a book, and I'll take the book and I'll say, okay, Kwame, read this. Oh, okay, I'm sorry, Brother Kaba. I don't know what it says. I'll cover the words. I'll say, Kwame, what do you see? He says, I see a boy that's chasing a dog that's chasing a ball. I say, what color is the ball, Kwame? It's red. I take it down, what does it say? The boy is chasing the dog that's chasing the red ball. Is it that Kwame can't read? Or is it that he could not decode the symbols? Certainly, he read the visual. All you got to do is decode it. You decode for me the German language, I can take that test. And this is the importance of language, because we are not approaching the teaching of language properly. The first step in reading is listening. That's why the oral tradition with kindergarten children, you have children, read to them. You're building up a mental vocabulary. The words you're creating in their minds. The next step in reading after listening is speaking. You then ask them, repeat the words that you were giving to them. Because when they then verbalize the words, they are now committing those words, not just to their minds, but coming out of their mouth. And then the next step is decoding. And then the next step is writing. So the process of reading doesn't start with reading books. It starts with listening. Goes to speaking, then to reading, and then to writing. The best writers are the best readers. The best readers are the best speakers. And the best speakers are the best listeners. It's just how the formulation works. Just like you study algebra, that gives you the unknown. You then study geometry, where you take the unknown that you now know and you measure the earth, geometry. And after you study geometry, you then recognize that there is one symbol that permeates the cosmic universe, and that is the triangle. And so then you study your third year, the measurement of the triangle, or trigonometry. And nobody told me that when I was studying math in high school. I wish I had known then what I know now. And then after you measure that triangle, what do? You begin to calculate all wisdom and knowledge, and what's that called? Calculus. It's a step-by-step measure. No problem. If you know to get somewhere, that's how you get there. There's no problem getting there. But when someone tells you go there, but they don't give you a map, how are you going to get there? You have to second guess your way around. But when someone tells you, we're going there, but here's the first step, algebra. Here's the second step, geometry. Here's the third step, trigonometry. Here's the third step, calculus. Then our students wouldn't be saying, oh, math is so hard. And by the by, you should not have to take college biology. Because whatever you learn in that college biology class, you should have been introduced to that in high school biology class. The only reason why they teach you biology class is because the book now costs you $52. It's all about the Benjamin. If ever you want to figure out what's going on, follow Benjamin. You'll find out. So that is the language. Trigonometry. When you study the Congolese cosmology and you decipher the symbols as you go into this book, you will learn that there is one important symbol that is going to permeate Congolese cosmology, and that is what they call the V. The V is an inverted pyramid. If you go and you walk up that wall, you are going to come to a picture that's going to look like this. And this picture represents the Ka in the Kamene language. Ka. The Ka represents the spirit. In other words, when your hands come up like this, in the Egyptian, even when you look at the Roman Catholic ritual of the Mass, you will see there is a point where the priest will go like this. And then the priest will go like this. That symbol, what that priest is doing, is he's calling upon the forces of Ra, the sun, to come down and to permeate. If you look at a picture of Akhenaten, you will see Akhenaten standing and you see hands coming out of the sun. And the hands look like this. And when the hands come out like this, it means that the hands coming from the sun. The right hand gives, the left hand receives. And what you see is that the sun's hands are coming down to Akhenaten's face. In other words, it's giving him light and heat energy. It is giving him life. You see that the sun has a left hand out and it's reaching out to Akhenaten. And that means that Akhenaten in return is giving back life and heat energy to the sun. So it's a reciprocal relationship between us as humans and the Creator in the sky. Not that the sun is God, but the sun represents light and heat energy that manifests life on the planet. And that this V becomes the single most important symbol in Congolese cosmology because of the nature of what it represents as it relates to reaching out to the cosmos in order to bring the heavens into place on the earth within. So as you know above, you know below. As you know below, you know within. And that's why you got to study astronomy. So, for those of us who may not have taken astronomy, may I recommend to go to Barnes & Noble and get a 3rd grade book on astronomy and study. If you'd like to do something today, as I said a number of times, I have DVDs here that explain it in terms of the Shabbat astronomy. But there's something that I'd like to tell you about, and this is something that I tell young people. This is what I tell everybody. I first went to Kamene in 1983 with Dr. Yosef Ben Yekaneh, the Dean of Chematology. Went in 87, but I went in 83. And I was so taken back, having had this trip to Kamene, going to the pyramids, and just having this experience, that I came back. I was a kindergarten teacher, and I began to teach my kindergarten class this story. And I passed a brother that was selling oils in the street, and I noticed that he had an oil, Blue Nile. And I asked him, I said, brother, where you get your oil? They have White Nile? He said, yeah, they got White Nile. And so I went to where he told me to go, and I bought Blue Nile, and I bought White Nile. And I bought a special oil that was called Ra, that was like the energy, the power that created this river to flow. And I was teaching in a school that had, it was a preschool. It was a school that had pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. One of the early childhood centers, years ago. And I was teaching a 1st grade class. I was going to schools around the district. I was director of social studies, and I directed the social studies program for about 35 schools, elementary schools, middle schools, in South Central Bronx District now. And I used to always enjoy going to school. It was a preschool with young children, and I went to the first grade, and I was telling them the story. I said, but I'm not going to explain the story coming from a perspective of just trying to teach them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some oil. And so I took the oil, and I was teaching the class, and I showed them, here's the white Nile. And I poured the white Nile into a bottle. And I said, the white Nile comes up out of inner Africa and it heads north. Wow. Because I was really trying to teach them, because I was taken back because I'm so used to saying down south. It's up south and down north on the Nile, because any river that originates south of the equator flows from south to north. If the mouth of your river originates north of the equator, it flows from north to south. We always say north-south as in direction of up and down according to the flow of the river. So we say we're going down south. They say on the Nile, I'm going up south, down north, because the river flows from south to north. And I was just trying to teach this to the children. And so I taught about the white Nile, and then I said, this is the blue Nile that comes out of the Atbara River in Lake Tana in the hills of Ethiopia, comes down with the force, and I say, this is the Ra, this is the energy that takes it and meets the white Nile in Khartoum and pushes the water up and empties out into the Mediterranean, and that's how Egypt was created, with the land coming back. Right, I was excited, passionate. Time to go. I'm going to go to my next class. Say, okay, Hotep, everybody, have a good day. Please, Brother Booker T, at the time, before I corrected my name, Booker T. Cole. Can we smell oil? I said, wow. I never thought about that. Because really, I was just trying to teach you all about the river. They said, well, can we smell oil? So I put a little down here. Oh, yes. I leave. I come back the next week. Go teach the second class. One of the children from the first class said, Brother Booker T, when I went home, my mother wanted to know what that smell was. And when I told her, she said, she wants some of that. She said, that's a good oil. She said she wants some. And so I said, well, you got to go and tell Mommy that I don't make oil. I was just telling her a story. They said, well, I don't know. My mom said she wants oil. I'll tell her what you said. So, okay. I go and I teach my second first grade class. I do the same thing, but this time I know better. I give her a little smell. And then I leave. Come back the third week, teach the next first grade class. Mother from the first class is at the school. And her friend, who is a mother of one from the second, is there too. And she said, look, I don't know what you're going to do, but I want you to make me some of that oil. So I said, well, sis, let me tell you. She said, here's $10. Now, I'm the kind of brother, I'm very obedient when sisters give command. Okay, when sisters drop it, I'm there. So I go, I give you a little sample of everything the same way, and I come back, I make a little oil. I come back, there's more people there that want oil. Now, let me make this story short, because I could go on with this story. I always use this because I sell oil, only one. This one. You have a sample. It's the only oil that I produce. And it was given to me, I believe it was a gift in a sense, because my heart was simply to teach children something. It wasn't to make money, it wasn't to create an oil, it was simply to teach. But because my heart was in it, I've always felt that this oil was very special. I sell this oil in many different places now. I use the same thing that everybody else uses. You wear perfume, trust me, they're ripping you off. They really are. Because I use the same oil that they use. The price I sell my oil for is totally different. But because it was given to me as a gift, the main thing I'm saying to you is this. In life, you'd be surprised where your blessings come from when your heart's in the right place. And I think it's important for our children and for all of us to understand this principle of life. And I share this sample with you because I've also studied olfaction. As you're in this class with this information, you are looking visually, you're looking at me, you're looking at each other, you're having an experience. For those of you who may have shook hands with each other, for those of you who have made physical contact in one way or another, you now are also having it in a physical sense. You are hearing me. But what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to take the oil, and I'd like you to take it out, and I'd like you to put a little bit anywhere you like. If you're allergic, please, no. If you can handle it, go ahead. I'd like you to rub each side, and I'd like you to smell it. Because in doing this, you are now adding a new dimension to this class. Because now, you smell this class. You see it, you hear it, now you smell it. I have now brought this to another level. There will be times in your life where you will hear words such as Congo, Cosmology, Shabaka. You will hear those words, but you will smell that aroma. There are times when you will smell something that smells like that, and you'll remember this class. The olfactory sense is one of the earliest and most important senses that came to organic life because of the nature of survival. Long before we saw, long before we heard, we smelled. As animals, if you spoke to a lion, there's a very good chance that 3/4 of his vocabulary would have something to do with smell. Because that's the sense that the lion and the lioness depend on in life. Now, to wrap all this up, it is important to study cosmology. And I would like to give you the books that would be recommendations of readings if you should say, how can I take what I've learned and take it to the next level? The first book that I would recommend that you read is called When We Rule the World by Robin Walker, R-O-B-I-N, Walker, W-A-L-K-E-R. The second book is The Star of Deep Beginnings by Charles Finch, F-I-N-C-H. The third book is Memphite Theology, M-E-M-P-H-I-T-E, Theology, T-H-E-O-L-O-G-Y, by Muata Ashby, M-U-A-T-A-A-S-H-B-Y. You smile, brother. You know Muata? No, the way you smile was like, hey, I know that, brother. African Cosmology of the Bantu Congo by Dr. Fukia, Kimbwandende Bumseki Fukia, F-U-K-I-A-E. And these basically would be the books that would complement today's class. I really do thank you for your time, brothers and sisters. I thank my sister Shamala for inviting me to make this possible. I thank her family for sharing all of this time with me. Had a fantastic time yesterday. Husband Anthony and sons and daughter Adio, Salim, and I'm sorry. Oh yeah, I'm here for a while. I'm not going. Okay. To Sister Makeda, Brother Jesse, to the World Beat Temple. And I encourage you to continue this. Support this temple in every one of its facets. To Salim and Aiden, I remembered I meant to call their names. These are my brothers back there. All right. Hey, 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 hey. So I really appreciate the hospitality that's been offered me. I thank you for this opportunity. I thank you for sharing this time. We have work to do in educating our children, but it's possible. And I've come to tell you it's possible. I've come to tell you not only is it possible, but it ain't over until we win. And that we shall overcome by any means necessary, because Marcus Garvey teaches us that we are a mighty people who will rise by the will of our wills, by any means necessary. Because the Honorable Bob Marley says that no one can curse who Jah has blessed. And the fact that we're here and we were able to have this fellowship, we're blessed. It's time to roll back our sleeves and get busy. And then after we win, then we have to get busier. Because now we're back on the road that we were on before we were distracted. So let's get busy. Thank you very much. In the ancient Kemetic language, we say Shemem Hotep, which means I leave in peace. And afterwards, sister, I will give it to you. And then any questions or answers, questions, comments, I'm here until we are satisfied. And I have DVDs and I have oil for your perusal, for your interest. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to the next time.
This is the